take us, if you don't mind, because I do want to mention your blog as well, but take us back to maybe the start and your journey into DCU and your kind of angle and perspective and where you came from there.
Yeah, so I think maybe the first place to start was in TY. So in TY, like most students, we had to go on work placements. So my dad, he works in Dublin Airport, so I was just like, handy enough, goes to the airport, he can sort it out for me, it won't be too much hassle. And that was grand. And then on my second day, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I want to stay here forever. How can I do that? And then I was actually in the airport fire station, and one of the firefighters was telling me about a course called Aviation Management in DCU. And then I went home that night, looked it up on my laptop, and I was like, yep, that's for me. And then ever since then, it was to talk to my CEO, and it was my aim from then on. And then I got it. Yeah.
We have a comment there. Normally don't get comments this early in our conversation, but the president of the university, Dara Kyo, has tuned in to say that you're wonderful and everybody in DCU is wonderful. So there you go. Dara is watching and keep an eye. And Dara is always very close in terms of his engagement with students. And I know lots of students, get to Students' Union, and even students like Kate often interact directly. So thank you, Dara. Always appreciated. So it was what you wanted to do, but maybe give us a sense, and it's not a loaded question, but maybe give us a sense of your journey into DCU and maybe what, the angle that you took.
So like I said, after looking up the course, it was my aim. So then, so for 6th year, my aim was 465 points, because I knew in around that would be the amount of points I needed to get into the course. So that was my aim. I studied really hard, not gonna lie, I studied really hard. And then for my mocks, I got 419, and I was like, okay, that's good, on track, be grand. So I was just like, just have to keep working and I'll get it. And then day of results, I opened my papers and counted it up 3 times, and I only went up 1 point. So I got 420 points. So, which is amazing. I'm really proud of it now, but at the time I was absolutely heartbroken because I knew it wouldn't be enough points to get into the course. And like I cried all day. Like shocking. But then I think it's like 5 days later when you get the CEO offers. To be honest, I forgot that I applied through another scheme. I applied through the DARE scheme. So the DARE scheme is a disability access route to education. So I could apply because I have dyslexia and dyspraxia. You can also apply if you have physical disabilities, mental disabilities, and then obviously learning like myself. But yeah, it was so simple and quick. I just filled out the form with my guidance counselor one afternoon when I should have been in Spanish or something. And the day of CEO results, I looked at it online and I was like, I think I got it. And then obviously being dyslexic, I was like, am I reading it wrong? But no, I got it. And I started trying again. But yeah, and then ever since then, just been so happy in DCU.
So let's stay with that access route if we can for a moment. Then we'll get to talk about the actual course and what goes on. So you get the offer, you come in. Access, as I know as a staff member and as a former student at DCU, the wonderful work that they do inside of DCU, but maybe give us a sense of maybe the resources and the support that they would have given you and many other students all the time, really.
Yeah, so as an access student, we got to come in a week before all the other students, and we kind of had an introduction to DCU, and we got to know other students through that route. We got our own tour. So I actually met my best friend from college on that day. And then they also gave us the emails that we could contact them if we had any issues. And on that day, they set up appointments for us all so we could get the sports we needed. So I personally, for the junior cert and leaving cert, I typed all my exams. I had a waiver for spelling and grammar. I had someone reading out my paper. So I was like, I want that all again. So I went into the DCO office and I was like, I want this, this, and this. And they're like, okay, fair enough. But they're like, when you're in Ryanair, will there be someone reading out your emails for you? And I was like, no. So they're like, so you need to work on that. I was like, yeah, fair enough. So they just gave me a software. It's called Clara Read. So it's really easy to use. You just highlight what you want, and then it reads it to you. So it's been great. I don't need a reader obviously in my exams. It's just made me a more independent student and worker. So yeah, I really appreciate what they did for me.
Yeah, and Kathy McLaughlin and her team over there in DCU Access is part of the student support and development, the wider student support and development team, which do fantastic work. And obviously you're talking about the DARE scheme, but do fantastic work on, transferring courses, financial, emotional well-being. There's so many other resources there that if and when you do decide DCU is a place you want to go, you're supported holistically, so academically, and we'll talk about that now in a second, because people are tuning in maybe to hear about the aviation management program. Academically, you're absolutely supported in the world-class resources and teaching, but besides that, outside the classroom, no matter if you're a sporting student or a mature student or an access student, etc., there's many other resources there, so just bear that in mind for those that are listening. So we might then get into aviation management a little bit, just in terms of what's involved in the program, maybe where you are and where your interest lies, and what's ahead then for you, and then I'm going to talk about outside the classroom because I know you're heavily involved as well, but the program first.
So the first 2 years are kind of similar. So like Laura was saying, we have 6 modules, basically subjects every week. 4 of them are business focused. So like Laura said, we'd be in the classes with Laura's year group. So we have accounting, economics, marketing, business strategy, so operations, really interesting things. And then the 2 other things would be aviation focus. So we'd have airport operations, so how an airport works, airline economics, so understanding why airlines make certain decisions, looking at mergers, competition. Obviously, there's a few flight theory for those who want to go on to become pilots. And personally, I don't want to become a pilot, but I think it was really good to have those modules introducing us to the theories behind flying, so we have an understanding, which is obviously clearly important in the aviation industry. And then we're going to have leasing modules. So I'm not sure if you know, but 50% of the world's aircrafts are actually registered in Ireland, which is an incredible figure. They kind of like our tax in Ireland, but we have a really educated workforce in Ireland that are really knowledgeable in aviation, and some of those people come from our course. So yeah, that's a really interesting aspect of the industry as well.
Work placement?
Yeah, so then in 3rd year, for the first semester you go on work placement, and then second semester you're back on campus. For work placement, I applied through the intro program, like Laura was saying. So the intro program is great. So you kind of just submit your CV to the intro department, and they set up interviews with jobs that you'd like to apply for. So obviously I applied for Ryanair, Aer Lingus and Dublin Airport, the key biggest ones. And I got interviews for all 3, but I went for my Ryanair one first, and yeah, loved it, and I got offered the place. So I was happy out. It's the biggest airline in Europe, so I was happy with myself. So I was there for 9 months. I got paid every month, which is great. I also got not free flights, but like all I had to do was pay for the tax, which is great. And then coming back from the 9, I was in the flight ops department, so that was kind of piloty things. And then I was in safety and compliance, which I really, really loved. So like my 4 months in safety and compliance is what I think I want to go into next year when I graduate. So yeah.
I've talked to so many students, prospective students, people that are in DCU over the years, and just like Laura coming in from Valencia a few minutes ago, and you were at Ryanair, I have my own experiences and thousands and hundreds of others around DCU. The practical exposure I get and experience that kind of sets you up for success for the future is often paramount and key in terms of your journey. So you're in an aviation management course, which is taught out of our DCU Business School on our Glasnevin campus, but we do have, likewise an education campus, and there's teachers go out on placement and many other programs that take up that intra work placement, often paid as well, which is nice to get as well. I want to talk about a little bit about the future. So you mentioned, and some people that are listening, for those that are listening, may have an interest in kind of the pilot route or may have an interest in some other space. So maybe you're interested in, but what are the options coming out of the course?
Yeah, so I've talked about the first 3 years of the course, and then for the final year, you actually have 3 choices. So you could go out, if you're interested in becoming a pilot, you can apply to pilot schools. They have to be EASA accredited, which is the European Association for Aviation. Most pilot schools are. And once they're approved by EASA, then DCU approves them. The only thing I would say is if you're going down that route, the fee for pilot school is around 100 grand. Before COVID, there was cadetships, which is basically the airline sponsoring students to go through pilot school, and they pay, and they have mentorship programs. It's very competitive to get into those programs, but they are opportunities that you could apply for. Then you could also, the other option is you can apply to the IAA or other aviation authorities to get into their air traffic control programs. That's a little bit harder because before you get accepted, you have to pass an aptitude test. It's very, very hard. But if you practice, apparently there's lots of books and resources that if you practice enough, you get used to it. I might mention for both air traffic control and piloting, you need to pass a few medical tests. So just keep that in mind. And then the last and final option, which is what I'm doing, is staying in DCU for your final year, focusing on the business side of things, but also writing your big project. It's not a thesis, but it's kind of like a thesis on aviation and what you're focused on.
We might, I definitely want to get into outside the classroom in terms of what you're doing. It's because it is a massive part of DCU life in general. But just a reminder, there is a Q&A function on your screen. If you have a question as we're talking, myself and Kate here today, just pop it in. It's anonymous. I can put it to Kate. And as always, we're at studenthelp@dcu.ie if you think of something later on, tomorrow, next week, next month, or next year. So the current situation for you is you're very busy. Give us a sense of what that busyness, so you're writing your project, but give us a sense of maybe hours at the moment, and how much of that is kind of, I guess, independent learning. But what's going on at the moment?
So because of COVID, obviously everything's online. It's all through Zoom. So like I was saying, there's 6 modules a week. So 4 of them are live, so I have to click into the Zoom call. 2 of them, it's all pre-recorded. So like my lecturer said in the email, he was like, you can listen to one every week, or you can listen to them 7 in a row, like a Netflix series. It's up to us. I'm personally going 1 a week because I couldn't do 7 in a row. So yeah, it is intense because it is final year, but it is at the same time manageable. And I used to be class rep, but now I'm the rep for the faculty. So in my experience, if we are getting overwhelmed with assignments and things, we just need to express that to our lecturers and our course heads, and they kind of, as much as possible, try to make things as easier for us.
Give people a sense of that. So something's going on, you want something, maybe you have some feedback or whatever it might be. So you're a class, or were a class rep, and now faculty rep. What does that exactly mean? And maybe then try give us a sense of some of the skills and some of the personal development that you personally have gotten from those opportunities.
Yeah, so as class rep, your main role is if an assignment doesn't make sense or a PowerPoint hasn't been put up, or mostly it's asking for extensions and deadlines for assignments. It's just to email the lecturer, express the concerns, and kind of negotiate ways around things. And I think maybe the skills I've learned is negotiation and communication, also very important to learn how to write an email. I don't think I ever wrote an email before coming to college, but there has to be a degree of being formal, because it is staff members. And then also as class rep, you go to class rep council, so every class rep goes, and then issues school-wise are raised here and discussed, and decisions are made there.
So we spoke to Laura last about being in the Glee Society, and I think she was PRO in terms of the former position that she had, as well as being an active member. So you in terms of that role, class rep, you represent the class, you provide feedback, you express views, etc. that kind of links me into the kind of students union and the role that they play within the university. So again, lots of people might be as familiar with the wider DCU community. What does the students union do? What do they represent? You know, events and so on. Give people a sense of that side of it.
Yeah, so there's 5 people that are fully employed by the student union. So honestly, their main role is to make students' time in DCU as fair, as enjoyable, and honestly just to make DCU better and represent their points, represent students' wants and needs at a bit of a higher standard. So they've normally, well, they did this year as well, but for first years they have loads of events for making friends. I know my first week I went to something about, like, I watched High School Musical in a room of like 100 students um in like the student union hub. So yeah, it's really great. Yeah.
And they are represented across all of our campuses as well, academic campuses, just to note that. And the staff, full-time staff, as Kate said, fully are employed fully by the university to represent and to help our students with any challenges, difficulties, etc. So we talked a little bit around, I have a question coming in, so I'm going to look at that as we go. So a question here, Kate, are accounting modules hard if you haven't done it as a subject for the Leaving Cert?
Yeah, so actually it's a aviation management is a business degree. Like you said, it's taught out at a business school. But for my leaving cert, I didn't do business, I didn't do accounting, I didn't do economics, and I was like, oh my god, what have I signed up for? But so going into my first accounting lecture, I was like, oh god. But the lecturer was like, I know there's people in this class who have never done accounting before. I know that, so I'm going to start at the very basics. And he was like, we'll work our way up from there. It is at a higher pace than it would be in secondary school. But you get used to it. Like, if I can do it, you can do it. And there's so many resources. I know for accounting, for me, I loved my lecturer put up YouTube videos, so I just watched them on repeat. Um, it is hard. It is daunting when you first see all the numbers. I did ordinary level maths. It was scary, but you'll get through it. Don't let the accounting put you off.
And just to mention as well, and thanks for the question, there's a couple of minutes left. If you have any last minute questions, please get them across. They are anonymous. Just to mention as well, what Kate's talking about there in terms of online lectures and our lecture put up, we have what's called a loop system, which is basically like an internal ecosystem where all the students in DCU have access to a platform. And inside that platform is where all the lecturers, you can interact, you can chat to other students, you can chat directly to lecturers, you can obviously email them as well, and your classes and your presentations and any tests and quizzes and all different things are located there. So it's like a one-stop shop for all of your needs as and when you're a student in DCU. So just to mention that. So if I could maybe recap on these questions, these sessions are so short, so we're kind of racing through things, but maybe recap on your journey of where we're at in the conversation, your journey into DCU and your opportunity through the DCU Access service and the DARE, and you spoke brilliantly around that. You spoke a little bit around the course and what that involves, and at the moment where you're sitting, and the I guess final year and the projects. And you spoke a little bit around outside of the classroom, class rep, and so on. What else goes on outside of the classroom? Because again, outside the classroom and the experience there is just as important in some ways in terms of the academic exposure. So what else? I mean, I know you're a student ambassador, you're doing lots of other things. What else goes on outside the classroom?
So I've been primarily involved with three other societies. Obviously, the first one had to be aviation. Like, if you study aviation, you're part of the aviation society, which is really good actually. It's a great way to network. There's loads of master students who are great to chat to. They offer loads of advice. They have loads of industry people coming in giving talks, and then there's trips. So when I was in first year, I went to Hamburg. It cost me €50 to go to Hamburg for 3 nights, an accommodation and a trip to the Airbus Museum, which is great. And then in second year, I got more involved with the Enterprise Society. So what I did for the Enterprise Society, it was a challenge. So me and one of my friends, we raised €700 between us for a charity Aware, is for suicide prevention. But our challenge was we had to get from Dublin to Budapest, but go to checkpoints across Europe along the way. But the thing was we had no money. So We started off in Dublin. We had to go into town to Tampa Bar, and I was like, our first challenge was to make. We had options for challenges, but what we did was like, I got some tourists. I was like, can you please do Irish dancing with me, like in the middle of the street in Tampa Bar? And they were like, fine. So then I taught them how to do their 1 2 3s, and then that released money for us to get a flight to London. And then in London, my friend, she did like, we had to put it on our like Instagram, which is kind of embarrassing, but we put it on our Instagram doing like pretending we were news broadcasters talking about Brexit. We had no clue about Brexit. And then we went to Paris on the like train under the sea. Like we got on a bus from London, we ended up in Paris, and then we had to kiss someone under the Eiffel Tower, but like just in the cheek. And then we got money to go to Prague. In Prague, we went to Mass, got 50 euro. Then we went to Vienna. Vienna, we were just there for like 3 hours, and it was like 2 o'clock in the morning. It was -7 degrees, and we were frozen. And then we finally got to Budapest, and we got our debit cards back, which was the most amazing thing ever. But yeah, like when I went for my interview with Ryanair, yeah, they asked me about what I learned in DCU, but they're like, how did you go to 5 countries in 3 days with no money? Because that's what's on my CV. That's what I can say that I did in DCU. So they're fascinated by that. So maybe skills from that is just like survival. And like,
go on, sorry, keep going.
Yeah. So yeah, that I to this day I still think that's my best experience in DCU. And I've made so many friends that I would never have met just because they did the challenge as well.
And just to mention as well, because our university president Derek Hill is still tuning in, so just to mention, this was after Kate had all of her assignments and everything was up to date before she went traveling.
Yeah.
So just in case. But in all seriousness, it does give you a sense, and hopefully those that are listening, that's what I'm trying to do, is touch on outside the classroom and the range of opportunities. And it doesn't matter whether that's, as Kate was doing, traveling, or maybe it's something involved in the local community, or it's charity work, or it's sports, or dance, or drama, or the many other opportunities that are there. Academically, we spoke about it, and obviously that's incredibly important in terms of your career and your trajectory there. But outside the classroom, your personal development, your social network, your friends, all of that support, I guess, when you leave DCU and the DCU alumni community, when you leave DCU, it's a lifelong relationship and a partnership, if you like, that you have with the university. And again, it's just a note and to highlight that.